All right, so we're live doing a little bit of an AMA here tonight, and got YouTube over here, Facebook here, all the technology up. We'll see how it goes, but we'll just wait a little bit for some of you guys to show up. So I'm going to pull up some of the questions from the Facebook group, and if you jump on, give me a thumbs up that you are here and that you can hear me, so we know that the technology is working properly. All right, someone just asked, where is it at? We are here. Now, hopefully we'll get some guests to join us here later on. But again, I see we got some people coming up on Facebook. Can you guys hear me? Are we good to go over there? All right, so how's everybody doing tonight? So wanted to start doing a little bit more of these. Summer it's a busy season for us here, but we're on the tail end of chickens. We've got one more butcher day to go, and our chickens are done for the year. So pretty excited about that. Things are shifting ever so slightly out of the summer schedule for us, and this is something I really want to do more, is interact with you guys. We've got a couple events coming up this fall that I'll be at. We're doing this pork school at our farm, of course, and then I'm on the road with Joel Salatin doing some pork schools in Indianapolis, as well as Dallas in October. So that will be a lot of fun, and I really would love to do some more of these, getting involved with you guys. There was a couple of questions that were asked on the announcement, and we'll definitely jump into those. But also, any questions you got as we go along, feel free to post them up. And I understand for the Facebook group, I'm kind of making an exception to my own rules here about political stuff, that we are going to talk a little bit about political things, because that was pretty much all the questions that were asked. But all right, Mr. Greg Gunthrope will not be joining us to talk about his issue, so we'll cover it a little bit, but maybe do something with him later on. Big issue out there that everyone is posting and talking about today is the Monsanto verdict. And if you are hiding under a rock somewhere and you have not heard, a jury trial in California found Monsanto liable for causing a gentleman's it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a terminal cancer. And they linked that to his exposure to Monsanto and found Monsanto guilty for upwards of $300 million. And I've got a couple things that I wanted to discuss about it, perhaps a little bit of a controversial take on it. And what no one is talking about here. People are excited that Monsanto's finally got it stuck to them by a jury. And so I tried to today look a little bit into what the actual case was, what the facts were there, and what are the bigger implications of what all this means. Now, Monsanto has a very controversial history to them, obviously. They made a lot of chemicals that were used in various wars around the world. They are the biggest producer of glyphosate and other herbicide-based chemicals that are used in agricultural production, as well as holding many patents on GMO technology. They were recently bought out in June. The deal closed by Bayer Pharmaceuticals out of Germany in a $62 billion deal, I believe. So they're now no longer an American-owned company. And, one thing when the verdict came out that I immediately thought of was, who knew that it was going to go this way? Because there's no such thing as coincidences that such a massive company would sell a mere less than 2 months before a potentially huge verdict like this with 4,000 more cases lined up behind it. So there's some huge things coming down the road. So why would they want to sell? Well, maybe they saw the writing on the wall that this was, coming down the pipe. Why would Bayer buy them? Either they were ignorant to these facts, which I don't think they were. They're, Germans are smart people. And who got paid? Well, lo and behold, CEO of Monsanto, a guy named Hugh Grant, he pulled the $32 million golden parachute as soon as the company sold. So he was out. Not saying there's connections to this at all, but highly suspicious that you sell the company, you get a nice fat payout, and 2 months later, the company begins going down the tank legally. Now, looking at the facts of the case, I think there's two things that we got to approach this with. One is the sympathetic approach, but also we need to be careful not to get sucked in 100%. We need to have some skepticism as well and make sure we're looking at what isn't being said, what's not in the press about all this, and what's the real thing that we need to, I guess, discuss. Tried to look at some articles today from both sides, from some environmental groups and then also from, like Genetic Literacy Project, who were very pro-GMO. I don't know if this case will hold up on appeals. The gentleman in question was having symptoms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma prior to the alleged exposure, or not alleged. I mean, the dude was exposed to Roundup. He was spraying it multiple times a year, around the school, tidying up, doing the landscaper thing. Something, frankly, that I did as a kid a lot. My dad does for the last 40 years or so, and millions of other people do as well without having these adverse effects. Now, again, I'm not saying that Roundup does cause cancer or does not. I don't know, and we know there are studies that go both ways. There's ones that are far more saying it's not carcinogenic than there are saying it is, and there's a lot of funny money flying around and a lot of involvement from both the company and the government, which we'll get to in a minute on that. But what's not being said? It was tried in California, which is known for more, environmental concern and awareness. Perhaps that may have influenced the jury in the case. It was an expedited trial that was done with some hurry up. Some of the expert witnesses from the couple articles I've read, maybe were rushed through testimony and not quite cross-examined as in depth as either side would want. The judge at the beginning of the trial said it was a very shaky case, and he did not have confidence that there would be a verdict, but it proceeded to trial anyway. And these are for me catching up as a layman here, so by no means am I the expert on this. This is just what I've dug up. And there was surprise when the jury handed down this verdict. So, is this a victory for justice and the little man, or is this perhaps a judgment that will be vacated at the Court of Appeals? To me, it seems if the judgment is vacated, it's really going to put a damper on all these other cases that are out there. If it's upheld, you're probably going to see you're going to see Bayer try to settle a lot of these out of court, I would imagine, and it'll be a definite big shakeup. Industries have had these shakeups in the past. It happened to Big Tobacco. Came out that they were covering up the ill health effects of cigarettes for years, and they have all but passed away. Where now the food divisions of those companies are far bigger than the tobacco divisions of those companies. So, just the thoughts that were going through my mind. Here's what no one is talking about. These companies, they produce a product that people buy. And the reason that people buy these is because they have customers who demand a product for certain reasons. The reason that Roundup is so popular in agriculture is that we have a public that demands cheap food. And one of the ways to produce cheap food is the mass use and application of herbicides in the process. The notion that anyone is surprised that these chemicals are toxic, to me, is a little bit silly. They are toxic. Anything that is a concentrate that can kill something is toxic to the person who is applicating it. When you are buying the concentrate of anything, your automatic default position should be, this is a toxic substance that I am handling. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around for these type of things. And we have to back out and look at these situations in a big picture way. That, yes, let's assume that Roundup is a carcinogenic it's a cancer-causing product. Okay, there are a lot of things on the market right now that come with extensive labeling and warning and application guidelines. That in of itself does not mean that the product is evil or that the company is evil. Again, we are divorcing this one thing apart from the totality of what Monsanto may be and everything that they are represented. But I think we don't see beyond the company that the reason these companies become so big and these products become so popular is because there's a population that demands whatever the retail expression of that chemical is. And right now, that is cheap food. That is what the public demands. That is what farmers produce. And that is what companies like Monsanto manufacture chemicals to support. So I feel, again, sympathy and skepticism. I do feel incredibly sympathetic for this gentleman who is dying of cancer. That is a horrible way to go. I am skeptical that the case will hold up on appeal. And frankly, I am skeptical that it caused his cancer. He was showing signs of it before the dates listed as his toxic level of exposure. Plus, millions of other people are exposed to this without having a cancer. So maybe it's a combination of, there's always going to be that anomaly. There's someone who will die because of rainfall. They have an allergy where when they're struck by water, I'm using an extreme example, but we have those out there. People who die from grass clippings or from having a peanut in their house. So there are those cases out there where perhaps very commonly accepted and nominally dangerous products do have a terminal lethal effect on them. And that may be his case. I don't know. But a lot of times, especially legally and in the scientific world, they have to go with what is the majority of the cases. What is the most common denominator? And I don't know if his case will hold up. How can you link it back to that one specific thing especially when you're in the state of California where everything allegedly causes cancer, but there are exposures to things far more toxic than Roundup that everyone comes across every day. Things like if you live in a heavily populated area, the pollution level of the atmosphere, the amount of brake dust that is in the air, the asbestos and lead that may have been in the house that he was born into, who knows? So not to detract from the potential products, the potential problems of Roundup, or the potential issues, which we'll talk about next with Monsanto and the government being in bed with each other. But the specific facts of his case, I will not be surprised if it gets tossed on appeal. So for everyone who's running a victory lap on this, take a grain of salt with this, and also understand that Monsanto is really, in a lot of ways, the straw man that we have set up to beat for something that's a far deeper problem. And that deeper problem is we have a population of people who is demanding cheap food, and we have a supply stream that is supplying to that market demand in ways that include these products. So, to me, I always go back to that big picture that, man, what has to change is the public perception and the way that the public is directing their support. If for any other reason you should support local regenerative farms, it is the economic ones. It is, if you think Monsanto is the devil and Roundup is a cancer-causing substance, then for heaven's sake, why are you buying anything that is raised in a production model that relies on that chemical or that company to produce? And I think that's the disconnect that the tremendous percentage of our population is disconnected from. So now, shifting into the other thing that is not talked about in this that I think is the huge issue, even a bigger issue, and if this product is a cancer-causing product, why it was covered up for so long, is this incredible revolving door between industry and government. You have executives stepping out of active roles in these huge companies that control most of the American food supply and going directly into the regulatory arm of the government. The revolving door between the USDA and industry, whether it be the pharmaceutical industry or the chemical industry or the biotech industry or the meat industry, it's pretty much they walk out of one door, go across the street, and walk into the other door to become the regulator. And that is something, to me, that is an absolute travesty, that there's no way you can divorce your bias when you come from being the chief operating officer or the chief safety control officer of take your pick of these companies, and you roll over to the EPA or the USDA to become the head compliance guru for the regulations. To me, it is such a farce with this, to borrow an oft-used phrase, it is an industry government complex. The common one is the military-industrial complex. There's a government industry complex across the board. It's not limited just to military. This is all the way through all of these major industries. And one of the articles I was reading, was alleging how Monsanto was ghostwriting these studies that have been used to support their case that it's not bad. And it also said they helped EPA regulators write the language. So literally, the yes men or the representatives or the apologists for the industry, they went over to the regulatory side, the government regulatory side, and said, here, we'll help you write the language on what this is supposed to say and what this is supposed to mean. Now, again, this is something that the media is not talking at all about in the context of this case. But we got to look at that, this is more than just Monsanto being complicit in some kind of cover-up. This is our government watchdogs, allegedly, who are supposed to be regulating this stuff, who totally dropped the ball. And why? Because they're walking back and forth from industry to regulation, government to industry, and no one wants to upset the apple cart of massive profiting for too long, maybe an occasional slap on the wrist, but for the most part, it's going to be business as usual. So to kind of tie a bow up on that first topic, I know it's a real controversial one, for sure, but what's the takeaway for us in our businesses and on our farms? Be aware of what you're using. If you think anything you buy that's a concentrated chemical of any kind does not have some level of toxicity to it, you're really a fool. Any chemical that you're handling on your farm can have a health effect on you. So be careful with it, if you are using it. But more importantly, educate a public to the reasons why they should support your farm. If you are engaged in regenerative agriculture or certified organics, or trying to get away from using as many of these chemicals as you can, educate the public to why you are doing this. The reason we're not doing GMO is because we don't want to have a huge glyphosate presence in our operation and have possible residue issues that maybe we don't know fully about. Maybe it's harmless, maybe it's not. But one thing I do know is that we don't want to have to become dependent on that. And if you, as our customers, can support us using less of it by paying more for the product, ultimately that's what it comes down to, is doing things the right way does cost more. And that's something that the public needs to wake up to and be ready to shoulder a cost on. This is just going to end, and it will be on to the next thing. The broken production model, the faulty paradigm, will not be fundamentally addressed to why are we now dependent on an agricultural system that is so propped up by all of these chemical inputs. We are carving out a very brief period in history here where these things are effective, and we are seeing the results, say, on the antibiotic front, where we can have a supercharged production model that is cranking out incredible levels of production for a very short period of time by cheating biology and by cheating evolution. And we've done that with antibiotics, and that door is now closing, where pathogens and viruses are developing resistance. Not developing, but they, we have accelerated selective pressure on those pathogens, and now the good, the ones that can survive everything are the only ones left. And we will see that door close on herbicides as well. Already seeing herbicide tolerant weeds in a lot of fields. Just look at any big crop farm out west that posts pictures of water hemp, of amaranth in the fields, where now Roundup is old news. You have to use dicambia if you want to stay in front of it now. So it will just go on to the next thing if Roundup is discarded at the into the ditch of history. Look at the bigger picture of what's going on. Okay, so I think I have burned way too much time on that. Let's get to some of the comments here, and I'd love to talk about what are you guys doing on your farm for me, that I might be able to help you out with. What are some things that are a little bit more visceral to our actual experience here? So Terry said, as with tobacco, there will likely be a large government-driven settlement that will end these cases. Tobacco had to pay money to the states to cover the cost of treating the sick. Yeah, this will, if this ball of yarn unwinds that far, I can totally see the Fed stepping in and saying this is a matter of national security. Our food security. We have to have this because our entire production system is predicated on the use of these chemicals. So here's some distributed money. The government will take care of you, of course, and business as normal. Tim said, I wonder what the implications of this may have for other products. Who knows? My hope is the biggest need in agriculture right now is transparency to the public. There are states that think that it's the exact opposite, that we need ag gag and we need to seal off the public from what they're seeing, but that is not the way to go. And we are seeing, look at this Smithfield judgment down just, one state down from me in North Carolina, where these hog farms are being settled against, that the stench of their hog facilities is stinking up the neighborhoods, and they're now being found liable for that hazard, that health hazard, and being ordered to pay millions of dollars, not near the size of the Monsanto one, but certainly significant amounts of money. And just saw something the other day where Smithfield was pulling hogs out of those farms, and guess what? Farmers are going to get left holding the bag on that one. They still got to pay the mortgages on those hog houses. Maybe Smithfield will be forced to toss them a few shekels. Who knows? But the farmers subscribed to perhaps one of the only possible production models that was available to them that they thought was a way to have a secure level of income. And, as I've been saying for a long time, the industry offsets the greatest risk and liability of the production model to the farmer, and that being the on-site infrastructure. Those houses can only be used for one thing, raising pigs. Poultry houses around me can only be used for raising one thing, poultry. And if those contracts go away, there's Farmer Jones holding the bag on millions of dollars of loans, and no resource stream or no production stream that needs the product, or you would even give him product to raise. Transparency is what I hope comes out of it. That really is needed tremendously in the agricultural community. Nick said even water is toxic at high levels when ingested. Yeah, try jumping in the swimming pool and holding your breath underwater for a long time. Everything has a toxicity, and that dihydrogen monoxide certainly takes its toll on the public every year. So we are doing this on YouTube as well. Thank you guys for hanging out there. Guy was saying, Monsanto does a lot of damage in India. You see a lot of things both ways there, that it's causing, you see articles saying it's causing farmers to commit suicide, and then you see one saying it's saving their livelihood. Yeah, maybe if we could have some people from there chime in, that would be fantastic. It's Soros' fault, globalist move. There's people who have money invested all over the globe, and their expectation is to make a profit. And then 209 million for one man. How about the millions of other people? With that, game over. These are how these punitive judgments go. In the United States, it'd probably be vacated down to something a lot less. One thing I think for sure is this poor fellow, he's not going to see any of this money before he passes away from his cancer. And the people who are going to make the most money out of this are the lawyers. By far and away, they are sharks swarming to the chum right now of the massive payout. All right. What do you guys got going on? Let's talk about some possible more lighthearted and heartwarming topics. Colin asked there, what about the delegation of $5 million to ensure organic certification standards are being met in foreign countries after multiple shiploads of grain have magically become organic in Turkey? So this was something that popped up a couple months ago, where shiploads of grain being imported into the United States left their port of call from wherever, not organic. And when they showed up in the United States, lo and behold, some paperwork got slapped on it, and now they are organic. Yeah, 5 million is beans. Talking about beans, that is beans. I think it's a laughable amount of money being, again, just a little bit of whitewashing on, oh yeah, we're taking care of that problem. My question is, why are we importing grains from other countries? We have 14 months worth of corn sitting in inventory in the United States right now. Why are we importing corn from somewhere else if we are? We will have a buttload of soybeans sitting in inventory this fall with the whole tariff thing going on. So why are we importing, soybeans from somewhere else? To me, we should use the products we produce to supply our own country first. And yes, stuff that we can't produce, import from somewhere else. Of course, I love pistachios and these other things that can only come from other countries as much as the next person, but buy local. To me, that's as much as possible. Rodney Stevenson, how are you doing? He came up with one of our schools last year. His biggest question is how to get all of us farmers to come together. Strength is in numbers. I've tried at the local level with little to no luck. The unfortunate thing about farmers is it's like herding cats. If you've ever had a bunch of cats on your farm and you try to herd them together and get them to go one direction, one runs over this way and runs under the car, one goes over that way and runs up the tree, two of them start quarreling with each other and fighting, one of them is biting at your ankles, and it turns into chaos. I don't have an answer to this. there's been talks about farmer unions and things like that, but typically they end up being infiltrated and polluted by special interests. One of the things when we first started our farm, obviously you need insurance, and when you are direct to retail and you're handling product, you've got all these different insurances going on. You need product liability, general liability, worker liability, so on. So we went down to, let's just say, an insurance company that has farmer in their name or farm in their name, and said, hey, what kind of policy can we get? We're a farm about to do all these things. And they came back, no, we can't cover you for what you do. We just kind of cover like hobby ranches and more single purpose cow calf farms. So we were denied within our first 6 months of operation insurance coverage from a supposed organization of farmers. And then they hit me up at the county fair or send me mailers saying, hey, join our organization, we're all about farmers. And I'm like, hey guys, you're really not, because one of the main products that you make money off of, insurance, you would not even offer to my farm, my legitimate farm that is paying full-time incomes for multiple people and generating a decent amount of revenue and tax revenue for this county, and kind of has economic things going on. You guys told me to take a hike back in the day, so are you really representing farmers? I don't know what to do there. I think we're doing a good bit of it right here, though. There's 20,000 of us in this group. Some of you are spammers. I know you are, and I see you. But the most of you are people getting after it and good folks. We're doing what we can. You're doing what you can. I'm doing what I can. We're educating people. We're trying to influence policy, which will lead into the next thing that Greg wanted to talk about. The lasting change is often slow change. We can be looking for the silver bullet in this, that how can we change things right now? And the answer is we can't change things right now. It took decades to get agriculture in the United States in particular into the situation that it's in right now. This dairy crisis did not pop up overnight. For as long as I can remember, dairy has been in a crisis, and it continues to be in a crisis. And I've wondered, why aren't they fixing it? But every time, like every 2 years, this kind of bubbles to the surface. It's always, we're waiting on the government to fix it. We're waiting on the government to fix it. Please drink more milk, eat more cheese. The population is eating more milk and cheese than they have in, within a margin of error in the history of humanity. It's not about people eating more dairy. It's that there's a fundamental problem with the entire system. I don't know how I got down that train of thought there. I totally, there's no quick solutions to these problems. What is going to begin to fix these problems is, in my opinion, we'll put it, it's consumers deciding that what they do with their money matters. And how they're going to know that is by us educating them, is by farmers going out and talking with people and saying, look, the way that you spend your dollar, if you go to XYZ supermarket and you buy a box of cornflakes, only 9 cents of that is going to the corn farmer. If you buy a pound of beef, only 28 cents of that is going to the beef farmer. If you buy a gallon of milk, only, I'm not sure what it is, maybe a third of that is going to the dairy farmer. So if you really want to help farmers, go buy directly from them. I don't care if you're into organics or regenerative practices or biodynamics or all these other things going on. The number one thing that will begin to turn around this general agricultural crisis that we're in is by consumers supporting excuse me, consumers supporting farms directly. I think my voice decided it had enough of the monologue there. So, big ships turn slow. And they can often turn, though, with a small rudder. And us as farmers can be that small rudder to begin to turn around that ship. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Unfortunately, it's a slow process. There's people before us who have come who have begun to lay the groundwork for that. But I think it's time for especially my generation, those of you who are under 40, under 35 who are getting into this, it's time to really pick up the mantle on that and begin to run with really the PR campaign of what local ag should be all about. I'm getting preachy. I'm going to get a little preachy. We love to get tied up in these straw men of things that don't matter as much, that are not the big picture issue. And a couple to me, and often, let me say one more thing here. These straw men are the thing that people are most passionate about. So let's look at it. Let's just mention a couple. One would be GMO and Roundup, and even grass-fed versus corn-fed. How dare I say that? Those are topics that have legitimate merit to discuss, and there are better positions and worse positions for ecology and the environment on that. But when we are talking about the viability of agriculture in our farms, I believe those are strawman arguments that we run down because they're the hot button issues that we love to debate. I have yet to see a farm go bankrupt because they made the switch to or from GMO production. Now, there are ones who are doing organic certification with grains and they're getting a higher return because of that certification. And I understand that. But when you engage with the public at retail and you are selling a product, the majority of them, that is not the issue that they're buying on. And that's not the issue they should be most concerned about when we are talking about what will it take to save our local farms, our farming population, and this rural agricultural way of life. We're distracted, I think, by a lot of these things. And there are activists who like to distract us with them. Not to call out names, but you know who they are online, that they make certain issues that is what the issue is all about. That the reason American farmers are struggling is because of these grass-fed beef guys that are running around. And the reason that corn prices suck for everyone is because of these little nippy groups that are running around talking about GMO and GMO corn. And those, we are big into my opinion here, so hear me out on this. To me, those are not the issues at stake. That is not the cause. The reason that corn prices have collapsed basically are at the level of the 1970s. The reason that dairying is where it is that we are still operating under a fundamental mindset of scarcity, that we have to produce enough food to feed the world because we're recovering from a world war. That was true in 1940s and 1950s. That's not true anymore. And both industry and even farmers and government do not want to reconcile with these new realities. And so we are distracted with straw men instead of making the actual, to me, case, which is if you want to save American farms, you need to buy from them and eliminate a lot of these middle positions. Beef prices right now, cow-calf price right now is down roughly 60 to 70% from where it was at the high in 2014. And, if you are in a cow-calf area like I am, everyone was going nuts in 2014 and 2015. Calf prices were through the roof. They were easily getting $3 a pound for their stocker calves. I saw it go over $4 for a couple weeks, and everyone was going nuts. They're putting up big grain bins. They're buying new trucks and new trailers, and they're running up lease prices, a crazy amount, trying to outcompete each other. They're spending $3,500 for cow-calf pairs that should be culled and go to burger. You guys saw this, those of you who are in beef, and what happened? Bottom fell out of the market, as it does. And here we are sitting 4 years later with the price now 70%, 60 to 70% reduced off of that high, but the retail price of beef has only reduced 11%. So the source of the product, which would be the cow-calf farm, what he's gotten has reduced 70%, but what the retailer is getting has only shrunk by 11. So there's a huge margin in there that's being sucked up by someone, and it turns out that is mostly your middle processing. Your feedlots are they're making a profit, but really they were losing money at that high. Your processors are raking in the bucks right now. That Cargill had one of their best quarters in the history of their company for their beef processing unit, because they're buying cheap and they're still maintaining this higher price that the public got used to in 2014 and 15 when the price was high, and now it's time to make the money. I think a public understanding that if they were to take that money that they are sending to the supermarket, to the distribution, to Cargill, to the feedlots, to the backgrounders, and then when it finally trickles down to the cow-calf guy, and they're wondering why their local cow-calf farmers are going out of business, and they're like 80 years old, and the fences are all broken down, and there's equipment rusting away in the front yard and all that, and they're like, I'm paying so much for beef, why isn't this guy doing well? Well, our job is to educate them that he's not doing well because he's not getting much of the money. But now there's a way to remedy that problem. You as the customer, you can find a farm directly, you can support them directly, you can pay them a fair price for their product, and you know what? They can begin to turn their business around and turn their farm around. We don't need to be distracted on GMO or all these other issues, unless that is something of legitimate concern to you. But that's used as a straw man in a way, let's be honest, by both sides to cause polarization around that. Well, we already covered it. You know where I'm going with that. To me, let's first reconcile the fact that, hey, me as a direct-to-retail beef producer here in Virginia, it costs me $700 in processing costs to take a cow from the field and put it in those plastic packages, vacuum-sealed packages to sell. It costs Cargill like $70 or $80 to do that. So, of course, the economics of this are going to be difficult for the public to swallow until the supply chains of this can get figured out. So I know that was a lot of rambling on that topic, and I apologize. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, over on YouTube. Clayton and Robert, appreciate you guys. More questions here on the Facebook side. Do you think consumer health will be a major feature issue driving people to alternative production models? We had a new customer today for meat because of a severe food allergy for their son. I'm not sure if it'll be a major feature, but it certainly is a feature there, Matthew. We have several customers as well who are here because of allergy issues, which, I think there's a lot of whole approach to that needs to be taken, that food allergies can be caused by systemic exposure to different things. That maybe it's not just their exposure to corn; it's all these other products that have. You can see the studies that nutrition is reduced in food, mineralization is reduced. We're eating far more calories than we ever have before, but it's less actual nutrition. We're eating far more carbohydrates in the American diet than we ever have before. I read an article that 70% of women in the United States are chronically deprived of protein in their diets. It's because we're obsessed with eating sugar and carbs because it tastes good. Just a general observation on that. It seems interesting that in the history of humanity for all time, the struggle was survival, to eat enough to survive. I mean, you are eating bark off of trees. You are picking the meat off of the paws of animals that it's a struggle to survive. You need to eat every possible thing you could ever come across just to survive. And that was the norm for humanity. We now are in a time for especially the first world and even the majority of the second and third world, where survival now is not eating every possible thing that we can. It's controlling what we eat and the disciplining of yourself to not eat, because if we eat everything we can, it will kill us. but yes, there are significant people who are seeking out local farms for those health issues. For sure, we have many of those customers as well. And the science is beginning to back that up, that we're seeing higher nutritional levels in animals that are raised in similar production models to how wild animals are. That grass-fed beef has a similar nutritional profile to wild elk or wild deer. That the grain influence can cause a lowering of some of those essential nutrients and minerals, and people are looking for that. Hey, I want this. I want a good balance of omega-6s to 3s in the amino acid profile of what I'm eating, and so I'm going to look for those products out there. I think there are people who will come from all angles. There's the people that come for health. There's the people that will come for the economic reasons, but not to neglect people that will come for taste and flavor. That flavor has largely gone away from food. That when you try to create a system of enormous global scale, you have to look at perishability and how do we store the product and how do we keep it shelf stable for as long as we can. So that's why fruits are picked green, tomatoes are picked green, things are picked smaller, because it has to survive on the shelf. Well, you lose nutrients when you do that, and that's the compromise that's made. One of the most challenging things with educating a populace on this is to the ill-informed eye. Nutrition is blind. It's hard to see what good nutrition looks like. Now, those of you who are big into produce, of course, you can pick out a well-colored and smelling tomato over that kind of bland cardboard one from the store. But food is so readily available now that a population does not think about it. You just assume that it's there, like the gas station or the roads or electricity or all of these other things that we just take for granted. And food is one of them. We don't understand that not all food is created equal. Not every tomato is nutritionally equivalent to what it optimally should be. Not every cut of meat is, and that a food system can be cheated. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So there are people for sure looking out for these natural products for health reasons. When is the next pig workshop? I can't make September's class. We will have some next year. We're actually kicking around doing right now is having one here on our farm in Virginia and possibly doing one somewhere else. So stand by for details on that. Tim says, seems to me the government subsidizing farm operations is a fundamental flaw in the modern agricultural model. Tim, you rebel, how dare you think outside the box? It's interesting. Interesting. We'll tie this in. We'll come back to Tim's question here. There's that new Mark. I don't know how to say that book. The Dorito effect, along the lines we're talking about. How can a small independent farms deliver more convenience to customers? I think it should be done independently. Most of the urban people I know want the convenience of Amazon, but I don't want some equivalent of Uber sucking up my profits. There's certain things that you fight the market on, and there's certain things that you go with the market on. And even someone as stubborn, and those who know him know this, Joel Salatin is a stubborn man. He is right on a lot of things. He also has a stubborn personality. And he said for decades that he would never take credit cards on his farm. Guess what they take on their farm now? Plastic. Because convenient, that is a factor of convenience. And I agree. I think that the independent aspect of it is essential for independent food zones and individual contexts of peoples and people groups and urban environments that they can best be served by farms who are close to them. But when it comes to convenience, I think it's something that we need to keep educating folks on. Hey, the most sustainable way for you to support a beef farmer is to buy a whole beef once a year. That corresponds with the actual harvest cycle of those beeves, which corresponds to the correct grass cycle for that particular region when the most You have the highest bricks content, which is sugar content in the forages, which allows those beeves to put on the most body fat, and that they're at their prime and optimal condition for eating. And that's a very limited window during the year. So if you could have a freezer where you could buy that whole animal from that farmer, that's going to reduce the amount of packaging, reduce the amount of transportation, refrigeration, storage, everything. I think we need to keep educating along those lines, but I don't think we should run away from the convenience factor, that we should make what we sell as available to anyone, anywhere, by any means, as long as the economics of it make sense. You're talking about some equivalent of Uber sucking up the profits. I would say we do this with our shipping. We now offer shipping on our farm that will ship products to people. A lot of times it's in state, and it's someone, it just didn't work well for them to come to the farm or to one of our drop points. But I'm not losing profitability on that. They're paying for shipping. So we've unfortunately been conditioned by Amazon in the last couple of years to expect cheaper prices than a retail store, and also free shipping. And that is where the education, I think, will kick back in. And what we do is we offer convenience. You can buy from us on farm. You can get it at a drop point to your local area. You can ship it. We will even deliver it to your house. But every layer of that has a corresponding cost that is a convenience fee, because I do not believe that as a business owner and as a farmer, but primarily as a business owner, that my bottom line should suffer for someone else's convenience. Convenience, I don't know how to say this nicely, but convenience should cost the consumer, not the producer. And there's creative ways to properly address that. But people need to understand that just because they expect convenience does not mean it's any cheaper to actually get it. Convenience always costs, and so we need to educate on that. Let's see if we got any more questions here. Oh, someone was asking, what is an AMA? Ask me anything. So we're going all over the board. Okay, talk a little bit about what Greg wanted to talk about, and we'll jump on with him some other time. Right now there is the government has a petition open for people to sign to petition the USDA, I believe it is, I would say USDA or FDA, to change the definition of product of the USA when referring to beef. Now, you would think when you go to the store and you find a product and it says product of the USA, that most of it was made here. Maybe some of the plastic came from China, or maybe the porcelain came from somewhere else, but the majority of it was made here in the United States. Maybe one of the raw materials was from somewhere else. Well, apparently, what's going on with beef right now is that beef can be imported into the United States from some other country, probably Argentina or Australia is where a lot of it comes from, some even from Europe. As long as it passes through a processing facility in the United States, it can be labeled product of the United States, because as most things, the regulations are worded just vaguely enough that they can get away with it. It passed through our production line here at the plant, like even if it was only just a box like coming in one door and going out the other, it's a product of the USA. I wonder who helped write those regulations. I bet there was a little bit of a revolving door involved in that, but the petition is to change the definition of that wording to, if it says product of the United States, that means the cow actually grew up in the United States, not that it was brought here and sold here. So there, I think he had a post on it, but I'll drop a link in the comments after we're done here to that petition where you can go and sign that. Certainly it's something to educate your customers on, just to put it out and say, hey, there's this petition going around that if you're concerned about where your beef's coming from and you would like to support American farmers, that we want to change where it says product of the USA. Now, again, beware of the straw man here, that to me, this is not an issue about quality, because some people will like to run there. And frankly, the Australians and the Argentines can produce beef that exceeds the quality of American beef. So to me, it's not about quality. This is about the economics of it, though, that if you want to support American farms, you should know that when you're buying something that says product of the United States, it's coming from an American farm. I have absolutely nothing against Argentine beef. I hope to go down there someday and try some of it. Friends of mine who have been to Argentina say it is by far the best beef they have ever eaten in their lives. So to me, it's not a quality issue, although there were some issues in Brazil with some beef quality earlier this year. And the Australians are doing it well. Far more of their beef is grass-fed than ours, which is why companies like Chipotle are buying all of their beef from Argentina, and all their pork from England, and not so much from the United States. Boo. But it's about the economics of, we want our purchasing dollars to flow to American farms. If that's what we're all about, if we're about saving American farms, those dollars need to flow there. If we've thrown in the towel on American agriculture, as a government or as a society, and said, you know what, let's just export all that to Africa. Let's let them do it. Technology and industry is going to be how we make our money now, and blah, with farms. Let's at least just be honest about that, first of all. But if saving American farms is what we're all about, buying from American farms, I think, is a first step. So we'll post a link up to that. Greg will probably have more to say about that when he gets on at some future point. So over on YouTube, here back to Facebook. Prairie says, do you happen to have a link for the info on that? Yeah, I'll post it up after I get off here. On YouTube, thanks, guys. This is the first live stream I've ever done on YouTube. I wasn't sure how it would go, but it's a quick click to throw it up there as well. So appreciate you guys hanging out as well. John said, could you please share how your internship began in Virginia, or your intern began in Virginia? So probably a little bit about my background. So I feel like it's something I share regularly. It's not a secret at all, but I know there's a lot of new people who come through. So a little bit on my background. I grew up outdoors, living in the woods in upstate New York. Had a few chickens there, living on a lake preserve, fishing every day, out in the woods, hunting. So I was kind of brought up as an outdoorsman. Moved to Virginia, where I live now, as a 14-year-old boy. My parents had a homestead of about 20 acres where we did chickens, egg layers, dairy goats. I milked a dozen dairy goats as a kid growing up, sold the milk and cheese illegally to people who wanted raw goat dairy, because it wasn't really a thing in Virginia then that you were allowed to do, till I got busted by the government and they shut me down. So kind of funny story there, but anyway, first visited Polyface Farm in, I think, 97 or 98, maybe 98. And toured there and saw their operation. They were much smaller then than they are now. Joel had just written his first book, Pasture Poultry Profits, before then. And as we were pulling out the driveway, I said I could see myself coming here someday as an intern, because they had our apprentice. They didn't have interns; they had apprentices. They had two of them. And so lo and behold, 3 years later, fast forwarding the story, I found myself there as an apprentice. It was right after, back up a little bit here. So 2000, 2001, I was on my parents' place. I had the dairy goats, was doing well with them. We were doing maybe 500 broiler chickens a year. I was working full-time in my dad's landscaping business. I was also working part-time on a local farm. It was a horse farm primarily, but they also had two conventional poultry houses there. So I worked in those and got to see what that commercial side of poultry production looks like. And I can tell you it sucks. It was no fun. At that point, I knew I wanted to farm, and I also knew I wanted to go to the Marine Corps, and I was trying to figure out how to balance both of those things together. And I knew I did not want to farm the way that the poultry houses were set up, because that was nasty. So we saw Joel's place, started talking with them. I tried to go into the Marine Corps early on, but basically they were not looking for people like me, homeschoolers. And so I committed to going to Polyface, which just so happened that I started my apprenticeship there the Sunday after 9/11 happened. So 6 days after, an event that really reshaped a lot of our country and our foreign policy for sure. I did a 1-year apprenticeship at Polyface Farm from September of 2001 till October, November of 2002. And so at that point, I kind of made the decision over the year after that you can farm for most of your life, but you can only do the Marine Corps when you're young. No one's really signing up when they're 40 years old to do that. And so I actually stopped farming in 2003, enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I did 5 years in the Marine Corps, went around the world twice, did not go to Iraq. I get that question all the time. I did not go to Iraq. I went to Japan twice for 7 months at a clip, saw some farms there, which were pretty cool. And then, in 2008 and 9, when I was looking at either re-enlisting or getting out, my wife and I decided that, a career in the military wasn't something I was looking to do. I'd kind of achieved the goals that I'd set out for myself, in that initial 5 years. And so that's when we got out and started our farm, J&L Green Farm, which is here in Edinburgh, Virginia, in 2009. And that has been our full-time job, our full-time gig and passion from day one, was growing this farm and this business. And, over the last 10 years, we've learned a lot. We've grown a business from zero to where it is now. And that's kind of what brought me to this point, that, starting Farm Builder a year and a half ago was about transferring the knowledge that we had accumulated with doing these pasture-based, regenerative-based, retail-oriented production models onto, other people around us, our peers, but more importantly, the next generation that's coming on. And so that is kind of my secondary passion now, is not only running a full-time farm, but I'm also crazy enough to start another business trying to teach this and carry it out to other people. So that's the short bio of what I do. Someone on YouTube, are you gay? Don't think so. You can ask my wife. How expensive are cows? You can get a $50 cow and you can get a $50,000 cow. It depends on what you are buying. Jordan Winters, so my fellow Polyface alumni there, why is foreign beef better? Is it climate related or farmer skill related? I don't know if it's better per se, but it is certainly more readily available. The Argentines and the Australians are producing the majority of their beef as grass-fed beef. Perhaps the climate is more suited towards it. They have not gotten so vested into the feedlot production model of feeding a lot of grains. But I do know, everybody I know that's gone to Argentina and eaten Argentine beef says it is the best beef they have ever eaten, hands down. So I'm going to take their word at it till I get down there and try it myself. Or maybe I'll go to one of the Stockman grass-fed beef schools that the Argentine guys are putting on up here. Can you, Deb? Oh, man. All right, guys. So we are right here at about an hour. I probably need to wrap it up for this evening. Let me know if this is something you want to keep doing. I enjoy doing this. Maybe it's something we could do once a week or, occasionally. Do you have any guns, and yes, which? So I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I live in the United States of America. I will let you make the guess on whether I have any guns. And I never put pictures of them on social media. And I don't tell people what they are. So you'd be surprised. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. Definitely post up any additional comments. If you watch this down the road, let me know if there's something you'd like to keep on doing. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys. Aussies are definitely having climate issues right now. And I will check in with you guys next time. So keep it on out there in the fields. Get after it. And, understand that it's up to you what you're doing. Don't accept excuses from other people. Don't blame it on the government. Get out there, do what you can, because at the end of the day, you got to put your head down and be satisfied with your own efforts, and don't wait for someone else. So that's my little close off there. Great hanging out with you guys. We'll see you next time. Take care. All right, YouTube, thanks for hanging out. Wrapped it up there on Facebook. Let me just post that, make sure it's done. All right. Do I play Clash of the Clans? Oh man, get in the comments. No, I play zero video games. I play what is it? Farmville. I play that for real life every day. Um, why would I play Clash of the Clans? I've got 16 hours a day doing real world stuff. Not dissing on anyone who likes to play video games, but I prefer the deal. Handle big chainsaws, play around with real animals that can actually hurt you if you mess up. Real life to me beats virtual any day. Clash of Clans is the best game. Awesome. I like the game of life, but thanks for hanging out here. All right. Well, appreciate you guys on YouTube. I definitely will be back here doing this next time. You guys are awesome. YouTube channel went over 5,000 subscribers a couple days ago, which is awesome. When I first started the channel, I just threw some videos on there that I took, by myself out in the field, and it was amazing to see it blow up. It's like 2 million minutes of viewed time now. Only 5% of the viewers are actually subscribers. So the majority of you who are watching here or are watching in the future, you haven't subscribed yet. And it'd be really awesome if you can get me to the 10,000 subscribers, because apparently there's some cool features that creators can do with their subscribers when they get over that amount or something or another. So give me the subscription. It doesn't cost you anything. But thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you next time. Someone had asked about the school in Virginia. There are details posted up on that. Thank you, Amy the Goat, for subscribing. You are awesome. We'll see you guys around. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.